yote alotenda kwetu. Paza sauti yako tumtukuze Mungu, tumtukuze Mungu Baba muweza yote. Nasema asante, asante.
Nani huyo baada amefunga kinywa chake? Nani huyo hanyanyuki? Japokuwa kuna baridi, lakini katika kumtukuza Bwana kunaondoa baridi. Mchezee na viungo vyako vyote. Rose Kirui, uko wapi? It was not by their sword that they won the land, nor did their arm bring them victory. It was your right hand, your arm, the light of your face, for you loved them. Psalms 44 verse 3. Lakini kwa sasa, Dr. Francis Gitonga. Hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism, a medical condition that most of us know nothing about. But it is a moment to get to enlighten ourselves on how we can take care of our health. And I'm told that a family history may play a major role in it. We come from families, right? Therefore, I believe and hope that you are ready for Radio Maria Kenya Nairobi. SMS number 23405. Yani ninaweka tu kwa vidole hivi 23405. Ikiwa utakuwa na swali lolote ama ungependa kuchangia, vile vile mtandao wa WhatsApp 0740566552. Wini mwema nimekuona. Virginia Munyao, Pauline Gidimbo from Thika Makongeni, asanteni sana. Nitaweza kusoma jumbe zenu baadaye, lakini kwa wakati huu tunajiandaa for the Health Corner segment on Radio Maria Kenya Nairobi, a Christian voice in your home.
Asante, 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 twashukuru. Tumshukuru kwa yote alotenda kwetu. Paza sauti yako tumtukuze Mungu, tumtukuze Mungu Baba muweza yote. Nasema asante, 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 nashukuru. Asante, 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 asante Mungu wetu, nakushukuru. Nasema asante, 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 nashukuru. Asante, 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 asante Mungu wetu, nakushukuru.
Kwa majina anaitwa Father John Bugojeroge, nafanya kazi parokia ya Mtakatifu Yosefu Mfanyikazi hapa Kigajo, dekania ya Gatundu. Na mimi ni msikilizaji na rafiki wa Radio Maria 107.3 FM, sauti ya Kikristo nyumbani mwako. Na ninakaribisha nyote kila wakati tufisikilize hii radio yetu, kwa sababu ni radio ambayo ina mambo mazuri sana, ambayo ni ya kutujenga kimwili na kiroho. Mungu awabariki, awatimizie mahitaji yale yote mema ya ndani ya moyo wenu.
tuwaeleze wote kwa pamoja, lakini haiwezekani. Nasema
Well, Ave Maria, power to you. That shows you that we are ready for the Health Corner segment with Dr. Francis Gitonga. We welcome you to the Health Corner segment as we discuss hyperthyroidism with Dr. Francis Gitonga. Your questions and feedback are so much welcomed, especially those who are following us live on the Facebook page. You can leave it on the comment section. Remember, our SMS number is 234058. It has never changed. 23405. WhatsApp 0740-566-552. You can also call on 011-002-009. Karibu sana, Dr. Francis. We also wish you happy feast of Our Lady of Consolation. I'm a consolata.
Yes, thank you.
Karibu.
Asante sana. As always, we start by thanking God for the gift of life. We also thank God for the gift of good health. And we also thank God for the opportunity, this opportunity that we are able to learn something new, to be able to advance our knowledge in terms of getting to know those things or those conditions that surround us. As per last week's request, one of you requested that we discuss about a condition that is common, but most of us don't really know about it. Is a condition that medics or people in the medical field sometimes are not able to know about it more, or are not able to diagnose it very easily. And is a condition that I would like to dedicate to all of us in general. But more so, you find that as it affects all of us, men and women, it will mostly affect women a lot on a higher percentage. And it will also affect older people. Ama watu ambao tunafika ile miaka ya uzee. So it's a condition that has a confusion in terms of being able to diagnose. In all our topics, we normally talk about terms. So diagnosis means kujua ni nini. So as we continue, I'll make it very simple. It's a very technical condition, but it's a condition that we need to make it easy for us to really understand and have that knowledge so that we apply it in our lives and we're able to know how to go forth. So our condition today is hyperthyroidism. I repeat, our condition today is hyperthyroidism. And as always, before we start any topic, there are facts that we really need to know so that we understand. Now, hyperthyroidism is a condition that affects what we call the thyroid gland. I know some of us have heard of goiter. There is that swelling you find mostly in women around our throat. Kuna uvimbe ambao inafura hapo. So I'll also go into detail in like explaining a little bit about goiter so that we are able to understand. Now there's an opposite of hyperthyroidism. There is what we call hypo. Hyper by definition means something that is produced or is high. Hypo means not enough. So our condition today is hyper, meaning when there's a production of something on a higher level. I will also mention a little bit about hypo, or what we're calling hypothyroidism. So for us, I've said to understand this condition, we need to go to basics. We need to go into science a little bit, and we need to discuss the functions, or what we call when we talk about the thyroid gland. Now, when we go into this condition, I need us to understand that, first of all, we need to understand and ask ourselves, what are the functions of the thyroid gland? The thyroid gland is around our throat, and its main function is it deals with a lot of a very important function in our body. So let's be keen. Let's take our pen and papers. And the first thing it does is it produces two hormones. I will not go into scientific names, but we call them the T3 and T4. The T3 and T4 are hormones, and simply when we talk about hormones, these are a regulatory substance that an organism or a human being or any animal produces in the body, and they are targeted to certain cells in the body. I repeat, hormones are a regulatory substance that an organism produces, an animal or a human being, that are targeted to certain parts or certain cells of the body. So the thyroid gland produces two hormones. There is what we call T3 and T4. T3 is what is very active. It is one that does a lot of work. T4 is a bit dormant, and even though it's still important. Now, the other thing is that what are the functions of these two hormones? I've said the thyroid gland is a very important organ in our body that we can't do without. Now, number one, it does what we call, it regulates the body metabolism. Now, someone will ask, what is metabolism? Now, metabolism simply means the rate, or what we call the energy that is produced, an energy that is produced in the body and is maintained at a certain level. So when we talk about, there's another word we call hemostasis or homeostasis. So when we talk about metabolic rate, is energy that is produced in a body and it is supposed to be regulated or controlled into a normal level for the functions of the body to occur. So these two hormones, the T3 and T4, are produced by the thyroid gland, and their main function are as follows. Number one of the main function is that you find that they are the ones that control the heart, they control the muscles, they control what you call the digestive system, they control brain development, and they also does what we call bone maintenance, or they are the ones that help to develop the body to, these two hormones help the body to develop good healthy bones so that our bones are strong and healthy. So the other thing is that it is what we call, it regulates, what I've said, regulates the body metabolism, and it helps maintain the body and what the functions of the body in order. Now, now we go to definition before we go into a topic. And number one, we've said that we are discussing about hyperthyroidism. Hyper, from the word hyper, means a lot or excess. Thyroidism is a part of the organ or what it does. So when we talk about hyperthyroidism, simply we are saying those two hormones, the T3 and T4, when they are produced on a higher level and they are not produced, they are produced a lot, then it means those functions that I've mentioned they are supposed to perform, then they are distorted and they can cause problems. Hypo is the opposite. Hypo means these two hormones, the T3 and T4 hormones, if they are not produced enough, then it will cause other problems. Now, so simply when we talk about hyperthyroidism, what we are saying is that there is too much of those two hormones being produced in the body, and this brings about distortion or interference of the body functions. Now, as we continue, and please be keen, take your notes so that we go together, we want to discuss what we call symptoms of someone who has hyperthyroidism, who has these two hormones being produced in excess. Now, you remember when I started, I said that this is also a confusing condition. What does this mean? The following symptoms that I'll mention, and there are many, and I'll go through them one by one. It means these symptoms can confuse even the medics, not to have the right to be able to really understand what is happening. So it really helps that when you have the side effects, wakati unaenda kwa hospitali, then there are certain tests that will be done for us to really know what is happening. So it's a condition that is common and most people really don't know about it. So let's go into what we call the signs, what we are calling the symptoms that a person presents when they have excessive production of the T3 and the T4 hormones in their thyroid gland. Now, number one, these people will present with what we call of loss of unnecessary weight. Hujafanya exercise na lakini unapunguza kilo ovyo ovyo. You are not eating or you are not dieting, but you are losing a lot of weight. Your clothes are not fitting. You remember when I said about this condition confusing even the medics? It means there are also other conditions that can come forth and present with the same things. So in diagnosis, ama kujua ni nini, sometimes it can be a bit technical. Now, the other symptoms, you find that roho ya mtu inapiga haraka. You've heard of the term palpitation. Wakati unatembea kwa stairs, wakati unatembea haraka, roho yako inapiga haraka. Ama roho yako inapiga irregular. Irregular is what we are calling arrhythmias. Badala ya roho yako kupiga kawaida vile unasikianga inapiga pole pole, then you find sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it slows a bit. There is what we call kusikia njaa or feeling hunger. Umekula lakini bado unahisi njaa. There is what we call nervousness, anxiety attacks or irritability. Unakuwa na wasiwasi, unakasirika haraka. Being irritable means that even small things tend to provoke you and you become annoyed, you shout, you're not in control of your moods. Then there's tremors. Unaona mtu anatembea, mikono yake ama vidole inatetemeka. There is changes for women you find, and you say this condition is for all of us, but basically you find it affects more women than men, and it also affects us as we grow older, tukikuwa wazee. So you find that for women, the women who have been having a menstrual cycle that is okay or normal, then you start seeing that this menstrual cycle is misbehaving. Ama ile hali ya periods ya damu ya mwisho wa mwezi inageuka inakuwa tofauti. Now we said that when we talk about this condition, most of us will know of what we call goiter. Goiter is a swelling around the neck. Now for both hyperthyroidism, where there is excessive production of the T3 and T4 hormone, and hypo, where there is less or not enough, inadequate production of this hormone, you find in either of these two conditions, someone can develop that swelling around the neck. So the other thing is that you find that unakuwa na ile feeling ya kuhisi joto zaidi. Normally our body are able to regulate the cold and heat, but sometimes you feel unasikia joto zaidi kwa mwili. There is tiredness, there is muscle weakness, there is sleep problems. Wakati unaenda kulala huwezi lala vizuri. There is a thinning of the skin. Unasikia ngozi yako inakuwa nyepesi kidogo. There is also what we call hair becoming brittle. Hair kuwa brittle inamaanisha nywele yako inakuwa ngumu. Na when you go to comb your hair, you find that when you're combing, some pieces of the hair fall down or they break down. Now, there are so many other signs that happen or come about because of this condition. And you find now these are what the signs or the symptoms that are a bit confusing because sometimes they may present for other condition. Now, before we go for a break, I want just to mention a few things. And normally now we'll talk about what we are calling what are the causes of hyperthyroidism. I repeat, someone will ask, ni nini ambao hasa inaleta hii ugonjwa ambao ile T3 na T4 hormones zinatengeneza hizi hormones zinatengenezwa zikiwa mingi ama zinakuwa excess and they affect the body. Now, number one, you find that for this, there's a condition that is called Graves' disease. This is what we call an autoimmune condition. Autoimmune conditions ni kama magonjwa kama ya kisukari, diabetes, ambao kinga ya mwili ina attack mwili yako. So that immunity of your body that is able to protect you, it changes course and now starts affecting or attacking your body. So one of the causes of hyperthyroidism is what we are calling the Graves' disease. Now the other thing is that you find when someone has something called an overactive thyroid nodules. Overactive means something that is also now similar like hyperthyroidism. So sometimes someone might grow nodules around the thyroid gland. Nodules ni kama tuvimbe kidogo kidogo. And these nodules, now they are overactive, meaning there is a condition that comes forth. And if they are overactive, is one of the conditions that can lead into someone getting hyperthyroidism. Now, the other one is what we are calling thyroiditis. Thyroiditis simply means an infection or an inflammation of the thyroid gland. Hii inamaanisha around the thyroid region kunakuwa na ile inaitwa infection, and this infection now confuses or brings forth a problem around the thyroid gland, and this now start happening or the hyperthyroidism sets in. So let us go for a short break before we continue. Thank you.
ikawa nchi kavu, Waisraeli wakapita kwa uwezo wa Mungu Baba. Ona nyinyi Wakristo mnayo furaha, tumeona maajabu yake Maulana. Ona nyinyi Wakristo mnayo furaha, tumeona maajabu yake Maulana. Turuke sana kama chini kwa chini, cheza tusengereke, kweli Mungu yu mwema. Turuke sana kama chini kwa chini, cheza tusengereke, kweli Mungu yu mwema. Aliumba jua iangaze, kutwa nayo mwezi uangaze, tawale usiku wote. Ona nyinyi Wakristo mnayo furaha, tumeona maajabu yake Maulana. Ona nyinyi Wakristo mnayo furaha, tumeona maajabu yake Maulana. Turuke sana kama chini kwa chini, cheza tusengereke, kweli Mungu yu mwema. Turuke sana kama chini kwa chini, cheza tusengereke, kweli Mungu yu mwema.
Sengereka by St. Dominic Nandi Hills. Turuke kama ndama, tusengereke, kwani Bwana Mungu wetu yu mwema. Tunaye Daktari Francis Gitonga. Have you ever experienced or had such kind of symptoms, loss of unnecessary weight without even maybe exercising, palpitation, that is could be called irregular heartbeat, anger even after eating, feeling nervousness, anxious or irritability, being irritable, you are easily irritated, yani unakasirika haraka haraka, tremors, mkono unatetemeka, irregular menstruation, goiter, fever, a feeling of maybe you are feeling so tired, very weak, thin skin, brittle hair. Well, we are discussing hyperthyroidism. You could be having your question, your feedback, your comment. We welcome them. We are glad if you take part in this, if you participate, because it is meant for you. You are the reason as to why Dr. is here. This was a request by one of you. You can also send us your request. SMS 23405. You can also WhatsApp on 0740 566 552. You can also follow us live on the Facebook page Radio Maria Kenya Nairobi. Don't forget to call on 011 000 200 Karibu sana daktari for the second segment.
Asante sana Godwin. Very fast for those who are joining us, before we go to the last part of our discussion today, we are discussing about hyperthyroidism. It's a very common condition that most of us don't really know. It's a condition that is very technical. I'll make it simple. It's a condition that affects all of us, but mostly you find that it affects more of women, and it affects more of us when we get older. It's a condition that most of us have an idea, because when we talk about goiter, I know most of us, and most of us who are a bit older, I've seen someone who has a swelling around the throat. Now, this does not directly relate to this condition, but it can be a sign, or it can come about in reference to this condition. Now, for us to really understand this condition, we really need to understand that when we are talking about hyperthyroidism, before even I go to definition, it means we need to understand what are the functions of the thyroid gland, because this condition comes from the word thyroid. Now, the thyroid gland is a very important gland. It's around the neck. Inside is a small, very small gland. Its function is to produce what we call hormones. Now, hormones are chemicals or a regulatory substance that an organism or mwili ya mtu ama ya mnyama produces And its function is that it's directed to certain cells to make those cells perform or do what this hormone does or wants. So when we talk about hyperthyroidism, we talk about these two hormones. The first one is T3, which is very active, and the other one is T4, which is dormant, but it still plays some roles. Now, what are the functions of these hormones, or what are the functions of thyroid? Now, number one, the main function of the thyroid gland, and this is very important, please be keen, is that this is a hormone that regulates what we call the body metabolism. Simply, or what we call homeostasis. Body metabolism means that all the functions of the body, kila kitu mwili yako inafanya, they are all regulated by these two hormones in the thyroid gland. Now, the other function, which is very important, is you find that these two hormones, the T3 and T4, they are the ones involved in the following functions. Number one, they are the ones that control your heart. They control all the muscles in your body. They also control the digestive functions. Kukula chakula kusiagwa, and getting the nutrients from the food, and then you pass a stool ama kwenda choo. All these functions are done by these two hormones, or through the thyroid. They are also the ones that control the functions of the brain. So without these hormones, even our brains cannot develop from young children as we grow old. Now, the other thing that we need to know is what is the definition of this? Simply, there are two terms of our condition today. We are discussing about hyperthyroidism. Those are two words. Hyper means a lot or excess. Thyroidism is that factor or the thyroid. So when we talk about hyperthyroidism, we are saying that the two hormones, the T3 and T4, are being excessively produced in the body, and so they bring confusion and disability in the body. When we talk about the other condition, hypo means low. So when someone has hypo, which we are not discussing today, simply it means these two hormones are not adequate or they are not enough. Now, the next thing that we need someone will ask is that what are the symptoms? Ama mtu ambaye anapata hizi signs. And remember, you said this is very common with mostly women. Even men are affected, but on a higher level, we find most women are affected. And then also it will affect us, both men and women, when we grow older. Now, what are the symptoms that will come about? Now, number one is you find that mtu anapoteza kilo ovyo, you are not exercising, you're eating well, but you find your clothes are getting loose and you're losing more weight with no reason. The other thing is that you have what we call palpitations or a fast heart rate. Hata ukitembea kawaida na ukimbia unasikia roho yako inapiga haraka. Or you have what we call arrhythmias. Arrhythmias means that your heart is beating but it's abnormally beating. There are highs and lows. So there's that change. Inaenda juu, haiko stable, ama roho yako haipigi vizuri. Now the other thing is you also find someone presents with feelings of hunger. Hata wakati umekula chakula bado unasikia njaa. You are fatigued ama unachoka. There is what we call being nervous, being anxious, or what we are calling irritability or anxiety attacks. Unakasirika haraka, unakuwa na wasiwasi, unashinda ukiuliza maswali. You are in a state that you find that you are not okay. Now you find that one of the main common, you find mtu anatetemeka mikono ama vidole wakati hata anatembea ama akiongea mikono yake na vidole inatetemeka. There is a increased feeling of kusikia joto sana, unahisi joto zaidi. Our body, our skin is an insulation that controls where the hots and highs or the lows and highs. So when you have this, you find that unasikia ama unahisi joto zaidi. There is a muscle weakness. There is sleep problems. There is thinning of the hair or what we call hair brittleness. Unaenda kuchana nywele unaona vipande zinakatika. So these are some of the symptoms that will come. Now, before we go to the next part, we discuss briefly. Someone will ask, what are the causes of hyperthyroidism? Number one of the main causes of hyperthyroidism is what we call Graves' disease. This is an autoimmune condition, a condition whereby kinga ya mwili ina attack mwili ya mtu. And this is one of the main causes of hyperthyroidism. Now, the other thing that may cause this is what we are calling overactive thyroid nodules. Kwa ile sehemu ya thyroid, kuwa na nodules. Nodules ni uvimbe kidogo, and they are hyperactive, meaning that they are producing excessive T3 and T4. So they may bring one of the causes that due to these swellings, they may bring about this condition. The other thing is an infection, or what you're calling thyroiditis. And the thyroiditis means that gland ambayo iko hapo kwa shingo inakuwa na infection ama inagonjeka, and these may bring about this. Now let's go to the next phase before you come to an end. And one of the questions, you remember Godwin said that sometimes there's a relevance in terms to this condition and our family history, where we come from. So if anyone in your family has ever had this condition, then I'm not saying it is guaranteed you'll have it, but then we've had people who've had it, their family members or their siblings. Familia zao kama your grandparents or your grandfather or your parents had it, then most likely it may come forward and also affect you. So family history is very important to know where you come from, because sometimes when you start getting these signs and symptoms, it is always good to know this so that you can discuss this with Daktari, and then the necessary tests are able to be done for you to know whether you have it or not. Now, the other thing that to bring this is what we call chronic diseases. And one of the main chronic diseases is what we call pernicious anemia. Pernicious anemia is a type of anemia. Anemia simply means ile hali ya kutokuwa na damu ambayo inatosha kwa mwili. Na this type of pernicious anemia is not treatable. It's only manageable. And what it simply means is that mwili yako haiwezi tengeneza something called B12. B12 is a special vitamin that if you lack, then the red blood cells are not able to be formed in the body. So if someone has this kind of anemia, they can also be predisposed, or they can also have this condition, get this condition. Now, the other thing, and this is to our mothers and women, is you find there's the importance of what I have always said about ANC, antenatal clinic. Ile wakati mama anajigundua kuwa kona mimba, kuna ile miezi 9 ambao anapata before apate mtoto. It is always important to attend clinic, because this is where some of these things are known. So this also condition can also affect pregnant women, or someone who has just recently been confirmed pregnant. So it's always good for the expectant mothers to follow their ANC clinic to alleviate this, or so that this condition, if it's there developing, it's known on time and it's treated. Now, the other thing that I want us to talk before we come to an end, we go to the question and answers, is what are the complications? You remember I've said hii kiungo ambao inaitwa thyroid. When we talk about our condition hyperthyroidism, inafanya kazi muhimu sana kwa mwili, because this is the organ that controls the body metabolism. This is also the organ that controls your muscles, it controls your brain functions, it controls your bones development. Everything in your body is all controlled by this small organ through what you're calling the T3 and the T4 hormones. So what are the complications? If this condition comes and is not treated, this is a condition that can be managed or treated, and sometimes it can also go away by itself, as we finish our mention about this. So when we talk about the complications, you find is that due to these conditions, and you remember I've said it affects the heart, the muscles. So it can bring about heart conditions if it complicates and is not managed on time. So someone can get heart problems, someone can get conditions like stroke. I know you've heard of that. Ile shida ya kupata stroke, ama mtu unasikia ameanguka na akipelekwa hospitali alipata blood clot ama alipata shida ya roho. It can cause what we are calling congestive heart failure. Congestive means heart failure is the heart being blocked, the heart enlarging, and you find this will present na miguu kufura na damu kutoweza kupitishwa ama kupitia kwa mwili. So these are some of the complications if this condition is not treated. Now someone will also develop, we said it's the one that helps in the formation of the bones. So you find if this condition is not managed on time or diagnosed and managed, mtu atakuwa na mifupa ambayo inavunjika. You remember I talked about hairs, nywele kukatika. Is this also the one that is involved in the functions of the digestion, functions of the bones, functions of the brain functions? So unaona mtu anavunjika miguu ama mikono ovyo because the bones become brittle. Now the other thing is, as we come to an end, is the vision. You find umeona watu ambao wana macho ambao inajikondoa ama inaonekana ikiwa kubwa. It's not a mass that is this condition, but you find this condition brings what we are calling vision problems. And these are the vision problems that will present. Now, number one ni hiyo macho ya bulging eyes ama macho ambayo inakondoa. Unasikia gritty substance ama unasikia kama kuna mchanga ambao ni shida ambao haiendi. Of course, this can happen when someone also has an eye infection. Someone will also present with pressure or pain in the eyes, puffiness or redness of the eyes, light sensitivity, unaafaktiwa ni mwangaza, unaenda pali kuna light, unasikia uchungu, kichwa inauma. Double vision, unaona mtu, daktari wakuwa wawili na mkono mmoja, because your eyes are lying to you. And also what we are calling discolored swollen skin. You get patches on your skin ambao iko na color tofauti. And the other thing as we finish is what we call thyrotoxicis. This means thyrotoxic crisis. Hii inamaanisha shida imefika juu kabisa na hizi hormones mbili zina produce excessive T3 and T4 hormones. And this is how this thyrotoxic crisis will present. It will comprise with fever, very high temperatures, vomiting, diarrhea, what we are calling dehydration because ya kuharisha sana, and also what we are calling confusion and delirium, meaning that this is a life-threatening condition if it is not handled or it is not treated on time. So it's a very important condition that we need to discuss. And I come to a finish. I want to briefly say two things. Now, what is the treatment? I don't want to go into details about this condition. It's treatable, meaning that there are drugs that can be able to control and reduce the hormones, these two hormones in the body. It also can be, when we talk about the nodules forming around this gland, these nodules can be operated on and the hormone can start producing enough or not excessive T3 and T4. So it's always to know about a new condition so that you are able to know how to go about it. Thank you, Godwin.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. 10 minutes to go for the question and answer segment. Just to remind you on our communication handles, you can reach us through the SMS number 23405, WhatsApp 0740-566-552. You can also call on 011-002-009. Thanks for those following us live on the Facebook page, Radio Maria Kenya Nairobi. Okay, just to start or rush us into the question and answer segment, Dr. Majorly we are told that we are who we are in what we take.
Yes.
Pertaining to our diet.
Yes.
Is there any relation between this condition and the foods that we take? More so to the pertaining to the causes and also to the remedy or diagnosis.
Yes, there's always, when we talk about any conditions, there are two ways we look at it. Number one, for a human body to be healthy,
well,
a human has to eat the right food, the right amount, and eat what we are calling a balanced diet.
Well,
so if someone is eating well and eats the right food, maintains a good weight, then you find that person is healthy. Meaning that if we are talking about some of the causative factors of this condition, we said that one of the condition can be what we are calling Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune condition, meaning it can come from other families. So for that, we might not be able to prevent this condition. But when I'm healthy, even if I get the signs and symptoms, it means me being managed for this condition is much better than someone who is not eating the right way. Now, when we talk about this condition, there are two terms I used. Our condition today was hyperthyroidism. I also mentioned something like hypothyroidism. Hypo means the T3 and T4 are low. So there are supplements, like when we talk about the normal table salt that we take at home, is a supplement that contains what we call iodine or iodine. Iodine is a factor that for those who has what we call hyperthyroidism, if they don't take enough little salt that is necessary in our bodies, then they can present with condition. But overall, a healthy mind, a healthy body means that even if you get the signs and symptoms, you are far much better than someone who is not eating and feeding the right food. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much on that. And again, how about the matters on maybe age? Is age a factor?
Yes,
when it comes to this.
Yes, you remember when we said this condition, we dedicated to all of us.
Well,
but you find most of the people affected are women On a highest level, even when you move around, you see people with goiter.
Okay.
You find it's more common with women. And I said goiter can happen in both, either in hyper or hypothyroidism. So there is a connection in terms of age, in that for even men and women, as we grow older, this is the time we are more predisposed to this condition. Thank you.
And again, as you've talked about, it is more, maybe women could be more predisposed to this compared to men.
Yes.
Now, children are always a blessing from God.
Yes.
How does it affect, could it have an impact or effect on the pregnancy or during that expectancy period?
Yes, you remember even when I was talking about the people who are predisposed.
Well,
one of the most people common are what we are calling the women. And I remember talking about pregnancy. This condition can happen to women, like especially after a woman has conceived and becomes pregnant.
Okay.
It can come about.
Okay.
Now, for me to answer your question, we go into like what are the needs or what is the reason of having a thyroid gland. We said it produces the T3 and T4 hormones, that their work is, first of all, to maintain what we call the body metabolism. All the functions of the body are controlled by this organ.
Okay.
Number two, we said it's the organ that regulates certain aspects of our body. We talked about the brain functions, the brain development, our bone formation, our digestive system. So simply to answer your question, if a woman becomes pregnant and she has this problem, then it means everything will go wrong, because these are the two hormones, the T3 and the T4, that are in the thyroid gland, that are essentially there to control the body metabolism and most of the functions in the body. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Hello, Dr. Subanese. Hyperthyroidism patients wako na hasira sana. Nini inasababisha hasira? Assumpta Njoroge.
Thank you very much. In the symptoms, we mentioned so many things. There's one that I left out. There's a problem that with people with hyperthyroidism, wana ile hali ya kuenda choo mara mingi. Si lazima ikuwe ni kuharisha. So you find there is a frequent bowel movements. So unaona mtu anashinda kwenda haja, hata kama choo iko sawa na iko solid, anaenda mara mingi. Haja kubwa ama ndogo? Haja kubwa. Okay. Now, when in regards to this question, you find that asira, you remember we said what are hormones? Hormones are regulatory substance that are produced in an organism, in a human being or even in an animal, and they are supposed to specifically sent into certain cells of the body to make something happen. So that is the definition of hormones. So it means this irritability ama kukasirika is a factor that comes about because of these hormones being very high. So the T3 and T4, when they are unstable, it means there will be that. Even when they are low, when you talk about hypothyroidism, then there is that factor of what we are calling the psychological factors, mood swings, kukasirika haraka. This is because of what we are calling the hormonal factor. Thank you.
Well, niko na shida ya kuchana nywele na katika inaweza kwa sign moja.
Yes, now thank you very much. We remember, as always, when we talk about any conditions, I mentioned something when I started. I said even to the medics, before they really come up with a diagnosis, ama kujua asa mtu ako na hii hyperthyroidism, it's a bit confusing because I read so many symptoms that come about with this condition. So this can mean even other conditions can bring about, like the questions are referring to the question that has been asked about kukatika nywele. Well, so asa si lazima ikuwe ni hii inaleta shida. Okay. But the essence of our program is that when you find there is something and you are really worried, please go to your nearest facility, ongea na daktari na ataweza kuona ama hii ni shida tofauti ama hii asa inakuja na hii hyperthyroidism.
Well, there is this from Monica Achola, mafundisho mazuri sana. Mimi nakasirikanga haraka sana. Hiyo inamaanisha nini?
Now, kukasirika haraka si lazima ikuwe inahusiana na condition ambayo tuna discuss leo. There are so many other things. Even us naturally, we grow up with certain ways of lives. You find kuna watu ambao they are always friendly, they are always laughing, they are always smiling. Kuna watu ambao tunasema wako na temper. So it's not a must that kukasirika ikuwe na uhusiano. The same as regards to the other question. If at all you find the other signs, please kindly enda kwa daktari na ataweza kufanya hiyo historia. One of the things that can be done to be able to know is that daktari can also request for a test of the T3 and T4. Now, if those hormones are very high or they are not normal, they are very low, now hii itaweza kufanya daktari ajue kuwa Anadeal na hyperthyroidism, anadeal na thyroidism, ama anadeal na other conditions that relate to the thyroid gland. Thank you.
Well, based on these signs and symptoms, especially the ones of either being irritable and the rest feeling tired, okay, either tremor, what is the difference now between panic attack as a disorder and hyperthyroidism, or do they have any relation?
Now, simply, and I know I mentioned this last week, our bodies are very complex organisms, meaning even our conditions are complex in that you find if I have malaria, I'll present with fevers, I'll present with also tremors, ama kusikia baridi. If I have tonsillitis, I may present with things that I'm talking about today. So the best way when we talk about that question and many other questions that relate to the signs and symptoms, the best way to really know is kuenda kwa zahanati, kwa hospitali. If there's a history in your family, then this gains more weight. Na daktari anaweza sema hata I will recommend we do the certain test and like what I've mentioned, the T3 and T4 hormone test. So some of the signs and symptoms that are psychological, irritability, anything that relates to this condition or any others, you find that they relate in different conditions, and this necessarily does not say that everyone who relates with all this has this condition. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Nauliza swali, na yule ambaye kila wakati huwa anaendesha akienda choo?
Now, there are so many other conditions, as always I've said, that can cause kuendesha. You remember, even someone having an allergy. Kuna watu ambao wana allergy ya chakula, and you find wanaendesha. But what I've said in this condition, unless when they get to the crisis, the thyroid crisis, that will present with diarrhea and delirium, hallucinations or mental disturbances. You find one of the things that I had failed to mention, and I've mentioned it as we come to a close, was that someone passing motions ama kuenda choo mara mingi. Hii hasa si lazima ikuwe diarrhea. Kuna ile effect ama symptom in this condition whereby mtu anaenda haja kubwa mara mingi. So necessarily si lazima ikuwe diarrhea, unless when we are talking now to a crisis, wakati shida imekuwa kubwa sana, and this can lead to death if it's not managed on time, because this is what we are calling a crisis, and a crisis is a problem. So when you say passing stool a lot ama kuharisha, there are other conditions that can bring about this. Thank you.
Well, out of 10 of these symptoms, I rate 7 over 10. That could mean that I have, could it mean that I have hyperthyroidism if I've got 7 over 10 of these symptoms, or more than 5?
No, it will not mean that. The only thing I will advise, and I've said, is that tuende hospitali, tuulize maswali. Even maybe the way you understand the signs and symptoms might be different than the way I'm explaining. So do not judge yourself na kusema kweli daktari vile anasema niko nayo. Enda kwa zahanati, enda kwa hospitali, na daktari ataweza kusaidia so that you are able now. What we really confirm with the signs that you're having 7 out of 10 is that now test will be done to confirm. And either your fear will be alleviated, kuambua hauna, ni wasiwasi, ama maybe they relate to other things, ama utaambua yes, you have it, na umekuja hospitali mapema, and there's something we can do about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Subaniza and Daktari. A great topic, and I've really learned a lot. Be blessed. Waiting for hypothyroidism topic next Tuesday. So that is a request on the other side of it. You said hyper is high, hypo low. So there is a request to handle hypothyroidism.
Okay.
Yeah. So as we come to the end, maybe you're parting short.
Yeah, thank you very much, Godwin. The essence of our program always is information and knowledge. And I've always said knowledge is power. Right. I know the questions that have been asked have so many. It shows you are interested and you are listening and you are writing down. So if you have a family member, if you have a friend, your loved ones, na kuna hii shida, ama kwa familia yenyu kuna historia, it's always good to do checkups. One of the problems we have as African, and always we blame it to the lack of money, is sisi Mwafrika huwa anaenda hospitali wakati kuna shida. So my kind request is that even when you are healthy, it's always good to go for checkups for your blood pressure, for your sugar level. You can also have a discussion with daktari like hyperthyroidism. Umwambia familia yetu nasikia my grandfather had it. Could be having it. Daktari atakwambia, why don't we do this test? Or with the history that you're giving, you don't have it. So that is my parting shot. Let's have the knowledge. Let's use it. let's not self-treat or self-medicate, but let's go to where we are supposed to go, to hospitals, to clinics, where we have qualified people who are able to help us with the knowledge and also with the right treatment. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Daktari. Do have a blessed week.
You too.
Well, thank you so much. Hello, Daktari and Subanese. I'm enjoying the show and truly I've learned a lot. Teresia Nganga, asante sana. Jeremy Wadandora, Assumpta Njoroge, Esther Wamala, Agnes Nzula, asanteni sana. Nani huyo? Ann Nyangala. Wonderful topic indeed, Daktari. Hongera, Brother Subanese. Shikilia hapo. Blessings to all. Sister Pauline Maluti, God bless you.